The next group is the newly self-employed, which is around 200,000 people. HMRC, back when the lockdown began in March and April, had real difficulty in verifying the records of people who had not submitted a 2018-19 self-assessment. First of all, we should be totally clear about the financial years here. The 18-19 financial year finished over 11 and a half months before the lockdown began. The 19-20 financial year mostly took part before the lockdown and the pandemic. Of that entire financial year, only 9 working days were affected by the lockdown. And the 2021 financial year is the financial year we're in right now, and that's the one that has been most affected. Now, the government based eligibility on the Self-Employment Support Scheme on the 18-19 financial year, which ended almost a year before the pandemic began. The government chose that year because they had information about that year. The deadline for submitting 18-19 assessments had already passed, so the government had reliable information. At the time, 19-20 self-assessments simply didn't exist. People could begin to send them in a few days after the lockdown began, but they actually have until the 31st of January 2021 to submit them. 8 months ago, that was the harsh reality for self-employed people. But now, all this time later, there's several things the Treasury can do to support people who have not submitted an 18-19 self-assessment. It should have done these things months ago, but better late than never. First of all, HMRC should launch an aggressive promotional campaign encouraging sole traders and self-employed people to submit their 19-20 self-assessment as soon as possible. Then, HMRC should automatically contact any sole trader or self-employed person who submits the 19-20 self-assessment, who has a unique taxpayer reference or company registration that predates the lockdown, so it existed before the 23rd of March 2020. HMRC already has this information on their systems, and HMRC should contact people who have submitted their first self-assessment to explain to them their new entitlements under the Self-Employment Support Scheme. To mitigate the risk of fraud, HMRC can implement the same security checks that it placed on its late submission period for the 2018-19 self-assessments in April 2020. And to further mitigate the risk of fraud, HMRC can use the existing information it already has about taxpayers and their history of tax payments to verify wherever possible that they have a track record of paying tax and that their income is affected by the lockdown. This scheme, like all the other ones, must be backdated to the start of the lockdown to ensure a level playing field for all self-employed people and small businesses in the UK from 2021 onwards.